All right, so welcome everyone to part two of this triad series, this three-part triad series. Just to remind you, this is the last video, the last segment of part one, what I have on the screen right now. And if you're not familiar with this whole overall pattern and how it works, then definitely go back to part one. If you don't know it well, then go back and practice it a while more before you come to this video because it will be confusing if you don't know this well and it doesn't make sense already, okay? So do that as best you can and then we'll move on to part two. So really take your time, integrate. You have to have the base before you can move on further. So really go back and do that if you're not familiar with this. If it didn't make sense to you, go back and practice it more. Know it well before you come back to this video. And if you're there, if you're familiar with this now, let's move on. So part two. Today we're going to go over the major triads that we've gone over already, but we're going to show you how there's an awesome way to put patterns in each position so that you can access the 1-4-5 right in each pattern, very close together. So the 1-4-5, if you haven't watched the blues video, I have a video called the 1-4-5 and the 12-bar blues, which explains about the basic blues chord progression, which is 1-4-5, which refers to the first note of the scale, the major scale, the fourth note of the major scale, and the fifth note of the major scale. They use those three chords for basic blues shuffle, for basic blues, okay? So the 1 of D, the root note, is D, obviously, and then the 4 is G, and the 5, the fifth note of the D major scale, is A. So D, G, A are the 1-4-5 chord progression, the basic blues chord progression in the key of D. So that's what this little legend is here for. The white notes are going to be D major, the green are going to be G major, or the 4 of the major scale, and the A are going to be yellow, right? Yellow is going to be A, or the 5 of the scale. So you can see the distinction clearly. So all three of these patterns down here, if you watched the last video, you know that they are major. So this is D major in the first pattern, D major in the second pattern, D major in the third pattern. And just so you can see that more clearly here, we have D, D, and D. Now let's go pattern by pattern. The first pattern, this white notes here, are still D, like we just looked at a moment ago. So I put 1-4-5 here so you can see clearly, but this is the root. So this is the root of this pattern here, right, is on the second string. So this is a D, this pattern here, this white notes. Now, these patterns are movable all over. So if you're using the major form, this triad, this bottom triad on the first string, if you're using that pattern, then you can always use these patterns to find the 1-4-5. So from the D, and I'll show you how it sounds on my guitar here. I have my guitar here. So the D, of course, sounds like this. And then from the 1, you can go up to the 4. So right where the D is, you use the same fret, right? The third fret there where the white note is, the last white note. On that same fret, just slide up, bar that fret on the first and second string, bring your second finger onto the fourth fret on the third string. So memorize the patterns, right? That's what's important. You're on the same fret, see? So, and that is the 4. Okay, G. And then from the D pattern, if you bar or use your third and pinky finger on the second and third strings on the second fret and keep the first string open, and then the D again. So these are the 1-4-5 that you would play blues with. So it would sound like, that would be like the blues shuffle. So it would sound like, you can see how it's used in reggae a lot, right? It sounds very reggae-ish, like. Right? So you can hear it sounds like island music kind of. So you can use these so many different ways. It's just overall a really great sounding progression, and it's a easy way to find it on guitar. So you can do it on the first 3 strings like that. Or you can do it again on all four strings, so it would sound like this, right? Right? Really cool. So you can see how it's used in reggae a lot. So that's if you were playing all four. It's just the patterns right next to each other. And I'm gonna put the sheet up at the end with all four patterns right next to each other. So don't worry about if you didn't memorize them yet. Don't worry about it. I just want to introduce them all to you first, and then we'll all together. So again, if you remember the first part, pattern 2 of the major pattern. So this will be sliding up to here. So remember, the root note changes. So this is a D again, but the root note is on the third string now, right? And then from this pattern, again, you can access it. This is what's so cool about this. Each pattern has a whole 1, 4, 5 right next to it using the other patterns, right? So if you recognize, see, this is this one where the one is the white notes, which is D. This is the A pattern that we used before. Then right in front of it, right here, right up on the same fret you start on, is the D pattern. Right here, the green notes. So great. And then that is the G chord here, though. And so it's the same patterns, but it's a different chord because it's a different key. It's using the 1, 4, 5. And this is the 5 right here, the yellow notes, and it's the F position, the F pattern. So this is how it will be. It's all right in the same position. See? So, and then just where your third and pinky finger are, you make the D from that fret there, and then back to it. And then right where your first finger is, you just bar that first and second fret and make the F position. And back to the D. See, so it's all right there. You can do it however you want. Pick it. However you want to do it. But that's on the first three strings. And then again, just like before, you can, of course, play as four notes. So again, it would sound like this. I'll demonstrate for you again. So it would be like this. And then slide up, same thing, but with the pinky on the fourth string. And then I would go back, come back to the D, come back to the green notes there. So that's the 4 or the G. And back to the D, same fret, right? See, it's all right in the same place. And then just bar, right where your fingers are, turn it into the F position, those yellow notes. And back to the D. Okay? So all right there in the same position. Again, it might be hard to hit that, to not mute the first string. It might be hard not to mute that if you're barring the D on the 7th fret there with the white notes. But if that's the case, you could just, again, you can just use, you don't have to use the bottom notes. You can just go like this too. So, and then slide up here. So what I would do is like bar the 7th fret of the white notes, those 3 white notes, with my index finger, and then just put my second finger on the 8th fret on the 2nd string, and my third finger, like you can see right there, on the 9th fret of the 4th string. And then come back to the barred 7th fret. And then slide down to the 5th fret on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th string, and just put 1st, 2nd, 3rd, just like you see there in the yellow. And the third position, last position, again, this is the D that we've gone over before. So, the whole overall pattern is the D pattern on the 2nd fret, right? Then you come right up to the next one without skipping frets, the D pattern at the 5th fret, which is the A, right? The A position. and then you would skip 2 frets and you come to the F position, right? But it's still a D chord in the F with the F fingering, right? So that's what this is here. You can again do same thing using the other 3 same patterns that we've already used, that D, A, F we call it, the D position of the fingering, the D fingering. So from the last video, you probably remember this yellow notes here are the D fingering pattern, right? It's referring to the pattern. This white is the F pattern, and this green is the A pattern, okay? So 1, 4, 5, the white is going to be D right here. And then you could bar the 12th fret and come back. And right on that same fret, you're ending the D right there. So that yellow note is on the same fret as the white, right? And come back to the D. So it's memorizing these patterns, right? How these positions of the fingers are. So the first thing to do, of course, in the last video, we talked about memorizing where these white patterns are. If you memorize where those are, and you know how to transpose and change keys with those white patterns, which is the major chord, the first of the scale, then you can memorize where the same patterns are on the sides, and that's the 1, 4, 5. And then you can play this pattern of chords in any key. And I'm not going to put all 4 strings for all 3 patterns on here because it'll look like a whole bunch of dots crushed into each fret, and you you probably won't be able to make sense of it. So I don't want to make it look too confusing. So I just want to show you overall that this is the first pattern here, okay? And 1, 4, 5 is all contained in here, okay? And that's the triad. So that's the, okay, that's the first one. The second pattern here is right after that pattern, right where it ends, that one begins. And again, it's going to be, we're going to start from, this is just all on the first, second, and third string now first, okay? Right on the same fret. And then the third pattern right here is going to start all the way up on the 10th fret. And then again, you can do the same thing on the 4th string. So if I was playing for the first pattern here, it would go, all right. The second pattern would go, and the third pattern would go. Again, it's just same position, same patterns. That's why you memorize them, and then so convenient, so helpful. And this might look like a bunch of really hard to see by itself, right? But really just try to isolate them. They're the same thing from the first part 1, right? The white chords are the same thing from part 1. And then you're just using these patterns to play different chords. It's not the D chord. These are different chords, 1, 4, 5. And the pattern is all contained in each position. And the great thing about this, then you can move this whole pattern wherever you want, right? So it helps you actually know so well the bottom 4 strings because you can move these patterns anywhere. You can find them anywhere. So I can just go to an A chord where I know it's the F pattern, which would be this third pattern here. But in A, these white notes here, for an A chord, right, would be on the 5th fret, which is right down here. If I take this position and I bring it down to the A, it sounds like this. Play it on all 4 strings. Then I just take this pattern from down here, this third pattern, and I play these same chords on the sides of them like that. And I don't even need to know what the 1, 4, 5 is in A, but I know that it's right because I know the patterns are always the same. So I would go like that. So this is what's so useful about it. And if you have any questions, if it's confusing, let me know, and I'll try to make it as clear as I can. But it's really about taking it step by step and experientially playing with it, right? So just play with one pattern at a time. There's a lot of information in this lesson, right? What I suggest is go through it slowly and go back to the beginning, go through just the patterns one by one. So just this first position here first, the first pattern, right? And then play with just the second pattern, then play with just the third. Once you memorize those around the major chords, which are the white notes, of course, right? Once you memorize the patterns around the major chord positions and you know how separated they are, right, from the first video, we know that then it comes to the D position again, right? The A position is right next to it. Then you skip 2 frets, the F position, skip 1 fret, D position again, right? And if you know that from the first one and you memorize these patterns around them, then you'll know them all. And no matter where you start, no matter where you decide to do a pattern from, so in other words, like I could play E now. So I'm sliding up 2 frets from this right here, but I'm playing the same pattern. So like that. So same thing. And then I know the pattern for for the second, third, and fourth string there, so I can play it just on the second, third, and fourth string like this. Okay? So again, it's 99% practice, right? 1% theory. So just play around with each thing. Don't try to be in a rush to get through this lesson. It's a really lot of information, but it will be extremely useful if you feel like you want to use it. And it's helped me a lot, and I've come up with a lot, even just going through these lessons and playing around with it for you guys. So if you have any questions, need any clarification, let me know. And if there's any other theory stuff you have questions about, want to know anything about, let me know. And I'll see if I can make a lesson on it. So until next time, take care, and I'll see you then.